自分のできることを。
サイト。
お前ってやつは。
サイト。
Previously, our protagonist Saitu was a 9-to-5 virgin who was unsure how to live his life until one fateful day. He reincarnated into this new world and immediately started picking locks for a certain party. Now, after being acquainted with them, he finds himself amidst a fight against a demon god with only one hope, the senile geezer, Morlock. Episode 7. With Morlock in the middle of a time freeze spell and 100 seconds to figure out what he was doing, it doesn't seem grim. He looks around the area and, thankfully, his old head can recognize a couple of the people, that there is an enemy before them. Forgets what he was supposed to do again, so he asks Saitu for help, but sees writing on his hand. Thanks to this writing, he remembers his purpose, knowing that everyone is relying on him currently. Now, with his memory back, he wastes more time telling his companions that when they become senile like himself, they will mess up too. Finally, he finishes talking and uses a spell to develop himself in magical energy. With this energy, he rushes the demon god and uses his most ultimate spell to hopefully take down the demon god. As he uses his spell, he gains the enemy's memories, forcing him to hesitate before sending in an attack. He sees that his opponent, Knave, a famous ninja, is fighting in order to protect the one he loves. This makes Morlock hesitate. He knows that this is his chance to shine, so he capitalizes on the opportunity. He uses his attack. Once time unfreezes, everyone is stunned to see Morlock standing before a defeated demon god. While the demon god collapses, everyone else wonders if Morlock was really able to win the fight. Suddenly, a hand falls before them, and Morlock emerges looking like an absolute beast. He seems to have woken back up from his previously senile state of mind, asking the others to help him heal Primus. See, Prima has sacrificed herself in the previous episode to summon the demon god, thus resulting in this situation. Morlock reveals after he saw their memories, he couldn't bring himself together to defeat the enemies. Once Rylza hears this, she thanks Morlock for saving them, asking what she can do to help. Morlock reverts back to his old state and asks her for some bodily fluids, but Mompy interrupts them, flapping his tongue around like an autistic kid. Following this Lafa, the other fairy attempts to heal Primus, but she stops her. Primus tells her that she doesn't deserve a second chance after what she did, but Lafa persists. She recovers Primus, while Knave is seen begging for forgiveness for his companions. He tells the others to release the demons back into heal. Forming them, he forced them to follow him. He explains that he is the primary reason for causing everything to happen, asking them to kill him and save the others. They then ask him who informed him that there was a time-reversing spell, which he explains it was a magician named Chrome. Meanwhile, Morlock continues flirting with Rylza, asking her to let him get a feel of her chest. Like last time, Mompy interrupts the situation and puts Morlock's hand on his nose, acting as if it was the same thing. While this happens, the dwarf informs Knave that the mane he is looking for, Chrome, is actually Morlock standing before them. Then suddenly magical swords enter the room and enclose Knave, followed by the Demon King entering. He tells the others that Knave deserves to pay for his crimes, sending the swords in to kill him. Before it pierces his body, however, Demon gets in between them and blocks the attack, allowing another demon to confront the Demon King. This angers him, so he reveals his true form, tells the demons to stand down. Instead of following, however, one of the demons recognizes the Demon King as his uncle, so the two begin chatting it up. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. If you could create another season for a series, what would it be and why? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now, back to the recap. They ask each other why they are stuck following others' orders, both telling the other their boss is strong. The Demon King then gets embarrassed after his nephew laughs at him for losing multiple times to humans. While this occurs, Saitu asks Lafa about who the people before them could be. He sees their appearances and assumes that they must have their own circumstances for doing what they've been doing. Eventually, the chaos settles down, and everyone starts talking amongst each other. Morlock informs Knave that there is no time-reversing spell, explaining that there is only a time-stop spell. This makes Knave realize his journey was a waste, but Morlock has other plans. He tells them of the first person he encountered when entering the dungeon, revealing how strong they were. He explains that they might have a clue at reversing time, but he has no clue where this mysterious figure has gone off to. Following this, the right-hand man of the Demon King emerges and tells Knave that he has a chance at healing the witch. He explains that one of his companions has the ability to preserve health and revive the dead. This creates speculation relation between the groups. Knave grabs hold of this little hope he has. That is, until the Demon King's right-hand man informs him that in order to complete this spell, one must sacrifice their own life. Without hesitation, Knave offers himself up, causing Primas to protest. He tells her that someone must live on to help the witch, explaining that he is the only one for the job. Once the Demon King sees his compassion, accepts his request, and offers to use the spell in exchange for his life. Before he sacrifices himself, all of the random background characters voice their opinions, each having their own thing to say. With each of them getting little to no screen time, it doesn't really matter what any of them say. Eventually, Saitu speaks up, tells Knave that he thinks he should be allowed to do whatever. It's for the good of others. Before they do this spell, they send the demons following Knave around back to hell. They then use a teleportation skill to all go to meet with the man who can use the spell, but Knave stops them. He asks Saitu where his clothes came from, claiming that he is easily the weakest in the group. Despite this, he noticed Saitu acts as the leader, raising the question of who he really is. Nonchalantly, Saitu explains that he is simply just a handyman that works for the people. Once he hears this, the Knave is satisfied, so he teleports off to hopefully sacrificing his life for the witch. Episode 8. Now with them gone, everyone circles around Saitu, asking him if he ever found the robot. Explains that although he hasn't found the robot, there is still a bunch of other junk in here. Suddenly, as they talk, some low-level adventurers enter the room, causing Saitu to get greedy. Rushes over to the junk and starts rummaging through it, causing the others to follow suit. While this happens, Dwarf asks Morlock if he regained his memories, but he has other plans. He lifts the helmet of the dwarf and starts stroking the dog hidden within, causing Morlock to realize he knew this dog. This makes the dwarf think he regained his memories, but in reality he has no clue what is going on around him. Meanwhile, Knave meets with a priest who wields a weapon called the Soul Returner, a blade that can disrupt the very essence of the soul. The priest hesitates to do the spell, asking Knave if someone like him, an assassin, can really give up his life for another. Knave doesn't have to think long about his purpose, realizing that this is what he needs to do. He knows that if he doesn't protect the ones he loves, then he has no right to live by himself. Knave finishes by asking the priest to use his sin-filled life to hopefully preserve the life of another. Once he hears this, he doesn't hesitate to eliminate Knave, thus awakening the witch. As she awakens, she is unknowing what occurred around her, deciding to look out into the horizon. Here she remembers the faint memory of Knave, making her wonder what happened. And standing before her, Knave is somehow alive, with 2 missing limbs. Before this occurred, the sword that the priest wielded allowed him to spare Knave's life. He tells Knave that by taking away half of his life and half of Primus's, they can both continue living. This leads back to the present, where the witch seems a bit disgusted by Knave's appearance. She asks him who he is, making Knave realize he did this all for nothing. Instead of getting mad, however, Knave decides to give up on her and leave with only half of his limbs. He tells himself this will be fine, but Primus stops him, asking if he plans on just forgetting about her. She asks him if he is really planning on leaving the women he loved just because she forgot about him. Continues by telling him she gave up her own magic, so she plans on going back. After she finishes saying this, Knave looks back and somehow some thugs are already hitting on her. This enrages Knave, so he dashes towards the thugs with his single leg, claiming they will die if they don't get away from her. Thugs don't back down, however, thinking they can easily defeat someone with only 2 limbs, but they are proven wrong. Knave defeats them with ease, even after only having a single arm and leg. After this occurs, the witch thanks him, but this angers Primus, asking her if that's all she has to say to someone who saved her. Once she hears this, she invites the 2 inside, asking if they would like to stay for a bit. While he goes inside, the 2 thugs are revealed to be by Knave's demon comrades, who came back to give Knave the push he needed. Meanwhile, Saitu tries to claim some money for the junk he pulled from the dungeon, but has no such luck. He's told that it's all trash, so he forgets about the money and focuses on the people. Thanks all of the various adventurers for helping him, telling them they work well together. Once this happens, they all say their lines to Saitu, making Ryelza wish she could have him to herself. Whether it's the worthless hero or the random elf girl, they all have their thanks to give out. Eventually, however, the time comes when it's just Saitu and his original party, making them wonder what to do next. Ryelza starts by asking Saitu if he really is from another world. Decides to talk about this over a beer, so they head inside of a tavern. They question Morlock, asking why he summoned Saitu in the first place. He tries to remember, but tells them that he can only remember vaguely about his family and summoning Saitu. He explains that it was mostly an accident, telling Saitu that he really is unsure why he summoned him. Saitu doesn't care, however, thanking Morlock for taking him away from his boring life. After Lafa hears this all, she raises the question of bringing Saitu back to his original world, but this hits a soft spot for Ryelza. With her madly in love with Saitu, she asks the others to let Saitu stay in their world. She then runs out, making Saitu wonder what her issue is to get so worked up. Later that night, Morlock and Lafa follow behind, but are unable to find either Ryelza or Saitu. That is because the 2 are standing under the moonlight, sharing a moment. Saitu explains to Ryelza that in his past world he had nobody to rely on, felt as if he wasn't needed. He informs her that although he would like to see people from his past life, he feels more useful than ever in this life. Following this, he asks Ryelza if she wants him to stay in this world to see how she feels. He takes this as a chance to confess. A monster emerges from behind and interrupts their conversation, clamps down on Ryelza, but she doesn't falter. She rips the monster up with her bare hands and proclaims to Saitu that she needs Saitu in his life more than anyone else. After Saitu hears this, he goes by her side and begins to heal her by providing a band-aid and some medicine, then smiles at her and informs her that he wants to be useful to her whatever way he can. Morlock then appears alongside Lafa, asking Ryelza if she finally expressed her feelings. Ryelza breaks the awkwardness and asks Morlock if he can teleport Saitu back to his original world. He explains that if he were to do so, then he would go back to right before he died. This makes Saitu realize this life is permanent, so he becomes a bit happy at the thought of spending his life inside this world. They then head back to the dungeon to explore, this time without Morlock to let him take a break. Sadly, once they get back to their room, instead of being greeted by the normal old geezer, the clerk stands before them, informing them Morlock passed away while they were in the dungeon. Episode 9. Once they hear this, they start asking the clerk how he died and whether they tried to use revival on him. The clerk tells them that he is so old already, it would be hard to bring him back. He explains that Morlock died from some old dog that chewed up parts of his body, making it even more difficult to revive him. Party wonder how they could let this happen, remembering all of the good memories Morlock had with them. Question how someone as strong as himself could die from something simple like a dog. The two then tries to dig up the body to try and revive him. Ryelza informs him that because of how high level he was, it would be impossible to revive him. Saitu persists, however, telling the others that if there is a chance to revive him, then they need to take it instead of standing around. Lafa offers to buy the medicine to try and perform the ritual herself, while Saitu and Ryelza go to get marshals to dig him up. While this happens, two dogs are seen cuddling in hell together, unknowing to what is soon to come. The darker wolf then gets a mission from his boss to give him the white wolf, but he runs away instead. While he ran away, he got stopped by the ugliest monster ever, causing him to strike without hesitation. As the battle went on, the white wolf eventually regained consciousness and helped the darker wolf get an opening to attack. Upon defeating the monster, the darker wolf realized that he won, but at the cost of his lover's life. Laying underneath the body, however, is a child giving him hope for the future. Lafa, on the other hand, finally gets her materials for Morlock, finds an empty grave. She wonders what's going on, while Saitu and Ryelza are in a tricky situation. Standing before them is a robbed figure that is attacking without hesitation towards the others. They think it's just some normal undead, but after inspecting its robe, they learn that it's Morlock in the form of an undead. With this knowledge, they wonder how they could possibly revive him now, so they decide to fight him first. Ryelza charges in and tries to strike him, but Morlock's defense is simply too powerful. Saitu then tries to approach, but he gets stopped when the undead's head gets blasted to smithereens. Walking towards them in the distance is Morlock, who is now in a new form. With no skin, he appears as an undead. Suddenly, he transfers his appearance back to normal. Upon arriving back, Lafa explains that Morlock must have cast a revival spell on himself years back. Like usual, Morlock informs them that he has no clue when he casted this spell, and informs them that he has a bit of a problem on his hands, showing that he keeps dying and reviving, then explains that isn't the only issue, showing them his crotch, informing them he has no nuts anymore. This relieves Ryelza, so she tells him that he will be fine without it. Saitu then asks him how long his schlong was, causing Ryelza and Lafa to get embarrassed. They tell him that he can live without it, but this angers Morlock even more. He grabs Lafa and tries to convert her into a new one, but she eventually breaks free. Saitu then wonders how they can solve the situation, but they are stopped when the dwarf man emerges. He invites himself inside and tells them he overheard everything, revealing he has been stalking them this entire time. He then presents a book that is supposedly supposed to help Morlock's condition. He reveals that in order to get back missing body parts after revival, they need to find the body part first. Morlock shares with the others that the old dog bit off his nuts. That's where they need to go. Everyone then leaves, but Saitu and Ryelza leave the two to have a moment. Saitu sees the book and inspects it, but realizes that the book the dwarf was reading was actually written by Morlock himself. While this happens, the demon dog is seen alongside the cub, raising it in the overworld. Explains that he never thought life would be so difficult in this new world, revealing he has a curse. The following day, Saitu and his party look around town to hopefully find the dog they are looking for. As they walk, the stalker dwarf man finally introduces himself, telling the others to call him Givingal instead of referring to him as a stalker. He then shares that in the past, shared a bed with Morlock, revealing he has a bit of a strange side to him. As they continue searching, Morlock eventually tells him to be quiet so he can detect the mana better, but he has other plans. He uses his own mana to search the area, but unexpectedly he gets no results. After this happens, the elf girl emerges, causing Morlock to get excited. He tries to make an advancement on her, but gets stopped by Lafa. She explains to them that Morlock lost his body because a dog bit his balls off, so they are searching for the dog. They then meet up with Saitu, find him putting up some posters to see if anyone's seen the dog. As they continue thinking of where to find the dog, the elf girl, Franlil, informs them that a few days ago she saw a quest for an undead dog. Once they hear this, they decide to head within the dungeon to hopefully find said dog. While the dog they are looking for walks around the desert, thinking about his cub until he collapses. Thought of feeding his offspring in mind, he barely makes it to town, where he happened to find a strange object poking up. In order to survive, the dog bit off his nuts, but upon consumption he felt strange within. With the old geezer having so much mana, this awakened the dog to enter a new form, feared by all. Saitu, on the other hand, talks with Morlock until they get to the topic of Ryelza. He informs Saitu that he first met Ryelza when she was only 10 years old, explaining that her mother was killed by a wolf. Tells him that the child of this wolf ended up befriending her and raising her. They lived together until one day Morlock stumbled upon her and treated her like his own daughter ever since. He explains to Saitu that with all this searching, his revival spell has begun to wear off, asking him to take care of Ryelza if he dies for good. While they talk, the demon wolf that ate his nuts is seen overlooking them, ready to pounce. Episode 10. Before they engage in battle, Saitu tells Morlock that he is unsure if he can take his daughter. Morlock informs him that he knows the two like each other. He tells Saitu that he has no memories of his life, asking Saitu to be the one to take Ryelza to bed. Once Saitu hears this, he solidifies his resolve and asks Morlock to allow him to have his daughter. Morlock accepts, of course, but his happiness is short-lived when the wolf chomps into his shoulder, ripping away his little remaining flesh. Now, with Morlock out for the count, Saitu is faced off against the wolf by himself, while the others await his return. Ryelza thinks something might be up, so she goes to inspect, leaving Lafa and the stalker dwarf to talk amongst themselves. Lafa decides to follow Ryelza while the stalker waits for them to return. As they run, however, Ryelza is met with the worst possible scenario, finding Morlock and Saitu out for the count. Lafa rushes to Saitu's side to heal him while Ryelza prepares to engage the wolf in battle. With the two people she loves injured before her, Ryelza unlocks a hidden rage within herself, allowing her to fight the wolf without hesitation. Meanwhile, Leliza, an adventurer, is seen talking to herself on how to defeat one of the wolves. She shares that usually the wolves go straight for the joints, making it a difficult batter. Going back to Ryelza, and her arm is entrapped by the wolf, forcing her to be on the defensive. The wolf then uses its fire attack to blow away Ryelza's armor, but this doesn't faze her. She strikes back and deals a fatal blow on the wolf. Before she can finish it off, the white cub gets in between them, makes the black wolf remember himself, realize how much wrong he has committed. Because of this, he admits defeat to Ryelza and asks her to finish him off with only one request in mind. He asks Ryelza to spare his cub, but this enrages Ryelza even more, asking why he had to kill her comrades. Lafa then runs to her side and informs her that this time Morlock is dead for good, asking her to rethink killing the wolf. Ryelza then strikes the wolf without hesitation, but the attack is interrupted when a great demon emerges. It stabs the wolf and sinks into hell, showing it plans on leaving with the wolf. Once Saitu sees this, he pulls a robe out of his inventory and throws it at the wolf, hoping to save it. Lafa then joins in and heals Ryelza's arm, hopefully get her to use it to help Saitu and tell the demon to return the wolf, but it rejects their request, informing the group that the wolf has a ton of magic energy. He reveals that the wolf killed his brother, so he plans on using its magical energy to revive his brother. While he rambles on, Ryelza rushes in, but the demon stops her attack with the use of a magical spell summoning a thunder god. Right before it strikes Ryelza, Lafa joins into the battle and uses her own spell to block the attack. With the cost of her own power, she saves Ryelza, giving her a chance to run in and strike the demon. This forces it to the ground to ultimately die by the hands of Ryelza's blade. Now, with tons of dead bodies, they wonder what to do next. Somehow, the great demon re-emerges. Standing behind it is another demon who tells the previously dead demon that it was a failure. Following this, it explodes the area, causing everyone in the area to erupt in chaos. Along with this attack, undead begin to get summoned, and Lafa is seen unconscious. On top of this, the master of the greater demon informs the others that his plans on using the wolf's magic for its own well-being. After Ryelza sees all of this, she wonders if she is strong enough to deal with herself, but she knows first Saitu needs to get to safety. She asks him to take Lafa to get treated along with helping the dog and Morlock when he gets back. He accepts her request and runs off, leaving just Ryelza to face off against the monster. With her knowing that this battle could determine her fate, she decides to give it her all, using her full power. This isn't enough, however, which allows the demon to grab hold of her to easily finish her off. With then sends a blade at her throat, but right before it can finish the attack, Saitu runs in the middle of them and throws holy water at the demon. On top of this, he cuts the demon's threats in half with the use of the pliers, allowing Ryelza to escape and deal a fatal blow. She thinks she has won the battle, but right after the demon is sliced and half-time stops, and she gets encased in ice. Saitu notices this. He runs in between them and takes the attack head-on, saving Ryelza. Now, with all of her companions either dead or unconscious, Ryelza is left alone to fight against this greater demon. She struggles, but eventually Morlock is able to sense the magic that was stolen from him. He begs the dog to return it, telling it he will use the final bit of power to save his daughter. The wolf recognizes his courage and lends him the power, thus allowing Ryelza and Saitu to live for a little longer. This power, Morlock emerges after coming back from the dead yet again. Alongside him is Lafa, who is also somehow safe, treating the demon like small fry with the emergence of Morlock. He uses his sacred fire arts to summon swords that take down the demon for good. Once he finishes using this ultimate power, he walks back over to Saitu and Ryelza, showing he is back to normal. Episode 11. Now, with everyone back to normal, Morlock walks over to the couple, showing just how much of an alpha he really is. To their surprise, however, he has slightly changed. Morlock, now having a tail and dog ears, explains that by fusing with the dog, he's able to come back to life yet again. Meanwhile, the stalker dwarf is seen killing the random zombies, eventually defeating them all in a single hit. Once he does this, he tries to head to Morlock, but another zombie emerges and overpowers him. When he thinks all hope is lost, Franlil emerges and takes the zombie out. Following this, the priest girl uses some holy magic and takes down a bunch more zombies. While this happens, Morlock is still explaining how he fused with the dog. He tells them that while he was lying around, he had a deep talk with the dog, becoming one at the condition of him raising his cub. Morlock then tells the others that he wants to try and revive the dog. But suddenly, an attack comes flying in. Standing before them is the demon, who stands back up, despite being hit by Tier 8 magic. Despite Morlock being hit in the heart by such a powerful attack, he stands up perfectly fine. After this, he fully becomes one with the dog and regains his youth. This makes the old geezer now have the impression of a young man enraging the demon even more. Rushes Morlock with the intent to kill. This doesn't faze him whatsoever. Now, with his youthful form, he summons the golem that he was once merged together with. This doesn't faze the demon, but to its surprise, Morlock didn't summon it as a doll, but rather another part of his own body. Now, with the ability to control different parts of the golem's body, is easily able to beat the demon to a pulp. Even after an onslaught of attacks, the demon stands tall, announcing that it will finally unleash its true form. Like usual, Morlock doesn't care, using his magic to restrain the demon just as easily as before it awakened. Morlock then announces that this is the end, using Tier 9 magic to finally finish off the demon. Divides heaven and earth, summoning a meteor to fall from the sky right on top of the demon's head. After a long battle, this finally finishes it off, leaving only Saitu's party standing in the area. Once they see this, they think the battle is over, but the demon begins regenerating once again. In a seemingly endless battle, Morlock prepares to use yet another attack, but midway through, he reverts back to his senile form. This gives the demon a chance to strike back, leaving everyone in a frenzy. Instead of watching from afar as usual, Saitu emerges and slices off the arm of the demon. Following this, Morlock uses his spell once again to hopefully end this long battle once and for all. Because Saitu played a role in the battle, the demon is now defeated by Morlock's magic, relieving the party. After all this happens, Ryelza begins stripping down, running to Saitu's side. She tries to embrace him, but yet again, the demon comes back to life. Right before it gets a piece of Saitu, the cub jumps out and takes it down, this time vanishing the demon for good. Because of how many times the demon keeps appearing, Lafa offers to cleanse the entire area. Before she does, however, Franlil and her party emerge, offering to do the cleanup of the monsters. Now, with more people to help them, Saitu finally relaxes, only to later find the cub barking at him. He wonders when he will get a break, but eventually Morlock comes and picks up the cub, explains to the dog that he currently has his father's power and that he will try and return it one day. The others protest, but Morlock persists, telling them that his new goal in life will be to help the cub's father. Morlock then approaches the parent dog and enters its mind to talk with it once again. He tells the wolf that he still has things he needs to do, asking him to not give up so soon. This seems to be enough to encourage the wolf to come back, so it does. Telling its cub it won't leave him again. The only downside to this event is that Morlock sacrificed his own body, making us wonder if he will suddenly revive again. With Ryelza's grim expression, however, it seems that Morlock may finally be gone for good. Episode 12. Following these events, Saitu wonders if he really has been useful to his group. He thinks back of all the adventurers they have done. Eventually waking up in the morning, he finds himself alongside Ryelza in a sorry state, making him wonder what happened. She explains that he has been unconscious for over a day, telling him she was worried for him. This makes Saitu realize he is wanted by others, so he asks about Morlock. Fortunately, it seems like Morlock has passed away, or so we thought. He appears alive and well yet again, making him not even feel bad if he dies anymore. Alongside Morlock is an elven girl, showing that Morlock is definitely back to his usual self. After this happens, Saitu climbs up the Great Labyrinth where he finally talks with Ryelza. He asks her if she changed his clothes, making her remember what happened. She gets embarrassed and says it was the dwarf guy, which leads to Saitu asking more about what happened while he was out cold. She tells him that the wolf and its cub disappeared, leaving them alone. She then talks more about her past, her having been raised by a wolf herself. Saitu interrupts her, however, informing her that he needs her in his life. Tells her that in his entire life, including his previous one, he has never needed someone as much as he needs her. Right before they are able to express their love, the dwarf guy emerges and asks Saitu to pick a lock for him. He tells Saitu that one of the guests at the inn they are staying at locked something important up. This causes him to rush off, leaving Ryelza to think about the words he said. She smiles at the thought of being together with Saitu forever. Apparently, Morlock ended up locking some girl's underwear up in a safe and tried hiding it when someone else saw it. Reveals that although he gained his past self back, he is still missing the most important part. During this time of him transforming between young and old, was actually a female. While this happened, he notices that Saitu is actually pretty good looking, causing him to have a slight crush on him now. Meanwhile, Saitu continues flirting with Ryelza, showing off some ninja sword he created. She wonders when he will finally make a move on him, but he never does, continuing as his usual self. He then gives her one of the same weapons, which causes her to test it out. She releases it, finds a hairpin in it, causing Saitu to urge her to put it on. Once she does, his heart skips a beat, telling her that she is beautiful. Later that week, they get back to hunting monsters until they arrive at a dog monster that looks like Morlock. Ryelza gets repulsed by the monster's ugly face, so she deals with it instantly. After this happens, they head back to the inn where Saitu barges into Ryelza's room to try and talk with her. He looks around, but only finds an empty cup. He decides to turn it into a bath for Lafa. She thanks him for making it and strips down to get inside, making Saitu embarrassed. She tells him that she is 10x smaller than he is, a completely different race, so he has no need to get shy. Even after hearing this, Saitu avoids her, hoping to respect her privacy as a maiden. Later that night, he sleeps with her until the morning hits, and she is in a human-sized form. He wonders what has happened, but accepts her new form regardless, hoping he can have a mistress. After she tries on various outfits, he takes her shopping through town until he eventually steals a dress, presents it to her, but she tells him that she doesn't want to accept stolen goods. He persists, however, forcing her to put it on. When she does, he realizes it was a good idea to offer it. She stands before him looking like a true beauty, causing Saitu to compliment her. This excites her, so she runs around, but she accidentally bumps into some bald-headed thug, gets angry and tells Lafa that she needs to pay him back for bumping into her, but Saitu protests. He stands in between them, causing the thug to get an even bigger ego, recognizing Saitu as someone weak. Saitu shows this isn't the case, however, dodging his attack and putting him down with ease. This unlocks a new feeling within Lafa, wishing she could be with Saitu one day. Sadly, however, she turns back to her normal form, making her force Saitu out of her room. Ryelza then gets back from her adventurers, asking Saitu what happened while she was gone. Before he can talk, Lafa walks out of the room and demands she gets paid for healing her earlier. Ryelza ignores her and follows Saitu to go inspect the vase that made Lafa bigger. While they inspect it, the dwarf guy emerges behind them and reads his book. He shares that the item makes people bigger than normal, which leads to Morlock entering the room naked. He tells the others that he was planning on using the cup for his nuts, hoping to regain his former youthfulness. Following this, Saitu loiters around town until he finds some beggar women with a broken shoe. He takes pity on her and repairs it with ease, causing her to ask if he is HandyMan Saitu. She informs him that he is famous around these parts, causing other people to overhear this. Later that night, Saitu informs the others of his situation, asking if he should try and help people out more rather than adventuring. With each of the members agreeing they approve of his idea, until Franlil emerges asking for help. Following this, all of the other friends he made along the way emerge, asking for handouts from Saitu as well. Eventually, he gets surrounded by people asking for things, forcing Ryelza to step in to help. She tells them to be more modest about asking for help, while Lafa takes this as a chance to rob them. The night goes on, with everyone having a fun time, making Saitu realize he has really become acquainted with this world.